Hello. Hi, Pascal and Pranchu. Do you want to do an audio testing?
Works for me, I think. Hi,
Works for
Pascal.
me too. Hi, Pranchu. It works for me.
Hi, Jeevesh. We would like you to also test your audio.
Hi, Shripriya. I can hear everything. It's good for me.
Perfect, perfect.
Hi, Pranshu. Hi, Pascal.
We will just wait a couple of more minutes and then we will start. Just one more minute. Okay, let's start. Good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to this webinar, which is the fifth in the series of Demystifying EPR, a key enabler for circular economy. Uh, this is a series of webinars that we are doing with collaborators in collaboration with GIZ, WEEE Forum, and Switch Asia. So I'd like to thank these knowledge partners for enabling this series. In addition, I'd also like to mention the sponsors of this dialogue, Apple, Dell Technologies, and HP Enterprise. Uh, the primary purpose of this series is to throw light on different aspects of EPR which are critical. And if we are to move the implementation of EPR at a country level, to the next level of maturity, then we need to start taking very strong steps towards some of these aspects, whether it is digitization, whether it is material balance reports, it is about how do we monitor each and everything, how do we enable circularity of the secondary material. So this whole series is really focused on these various aspects of enabling EPR to grow at the next level. I'd also like to mention one of the things that we are noticing, and this is especially for the Asian countries, India is today being looked at as an example of a country where EPR regulations have come in place. India is one of the very first countries in Asia where, barring Japan and a few more mature markets, amongst the emerging markets, India is the very first one where these regulations have come, and there are experiences for sharing. So one of the things I think as a whole community for us to do is how do we show what is the first level, what is the next level. There are some good things which have come out of EPR implementation, but there are also a lot of challenges which have very clearly surfaced. So this webinar series brings up some of those challenges, identifies how do we tackle them, how do we take our EPR to the next level of implementation. With me, I have Pascal, who is the Director General of WEEE Forum. In the very first session, we will both, through our own presentations, introduce what is material balance reporting, what are the global practices. Participation in WEEE Forum for Karosambhav has been a huge boon. And basis the work which has been done at WEEE Forum, we are now creating an Indianized version of what material balance report in the Indian side would look like. Which essentially means our definitions continue to be harmonized on what is recycling, what are the constituents. So for any global brand, for any participant in the electronics waste industry, the definitions would remain consistent, which means we will have a very harmonized way of understanding the reports. But at a local level, it will try to, be very finely tuned to the Indian regulation. So that's the change that we have done in terms of developing the material balance reports. Right now, we are testing them out. But let me first welcome Pascal and invite him on the stage. And Pascal, you can start with your presentation, and after which I can go to what we are doing here. Over to you,
All right.
Pascal.
Thank you very much, Pranchu. Am I sharing my presentation?
Yeah, please do.
All right. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for your kind words. It's true that we are very much supportive of the membership of Karosamba in the WE Forum. Karosamba plays an important role, and it's not just that Karosamba learns from us, but we learn a great deal from Karosamba and the Indians in particular. And what I will do today is provide some examples of the importance of what Pranchu called the material balance, examples of material balance, and also WE flows and know your market. All these elements, I keep on saying this at conferences, are absolutely fundamental in an effective WE management policy and policy framework. So you need to know your market, who are the actors on the market, you need to know the quantities, you need to know the WE flows, and ultimately you also need to know the material balance. So let me walk you through a few slides, the importance of material balance. So we need to know the quantities, and I just give you the example of the European Union, where we have had EPR legislation for 20 years. Actually, also this year we are celebrating the WE Forum's 20th anniversary. And we've seen that since 2010, the collection of WE went up from 7.3 kilogram per inhabitant to 9.5 kilogram per inhabitant in 2018. I need to edit these figures, but at the end of the day, on the basis of research, we were able to identify the progress that the different member states of the European Union were making. And that's the picture that we got. And these statistics are absolutely fundamental in understanding what's going on in the market. So we break them down in various flows. We call them WE flows. Where do WE goes? The conclusion is that 55% in Europe of WE is reported as officially collected, 20% disappears in other WE flows, and 25% is unknown, is unaccounted for. It's a big question mark. So this is on the basis of a lot of research conducted in member states, but also at European Union level. And we were also able to say, to disentangle the different destinations of WE. So we could say there's also exports for use. There is a lot of e-waste disappears in the waste bin, as you can see, the orange bar. Some of it, well, not some, a great deal also disappears in the metal scrap. A part of the WE flow disappears to illegal shipments of waste, usually to poor countries. And then we have the unknown flows and uncertainty. So there's always a level of uncertainty. But what I'm saying is that this picture is absolutely, and this research is absolutely critical in making an effective WE policy program. And of course, this is the European Union. The situation for India is totally different. You are much lower than 55%. And much higher also than 25% is unknown in the Indian market. And I will say a few words about the importance of monitoring. So material balance allows you to monitor the progress, not just at country level, but also you could monitor progress at region level, at local level, but also at facility level, for example. So it's a tool that allows you to understand what's going on in the plants. And all this allows you to identify areas of improvement, spot problems arising in the value chain. For example, if to see the efficiency of the process in certain plants, for example, and as I said, the efficiency of corrective measures and strategies implemented. So this allows you to obtain the data to assess your measures and your policies. And it also allows for much better strategy making. So you need these data, the weave flows, in order to understand what is the average composition material of the e-waste collected. It's not as simple as saying, okay, we know the composition of new products, so we will know what ends up in e-waste, because there's a long lifetime. Whatever arises now as e-waste in the market is not the same as what is placed on the market now. And also producers do not share data about composition. So you really need to do sampling, you need to understand the type of e-waste and material sitting in the e-waste. And also this allows you then to understand the value of the material so that you can fine tune your policies again, and the destination of the fractions arising from the treatment. And in the European research that we did, for example, we found out how much e-waste was actually shipped to poor countries, so we could inform the authorities that this is where their focus should be. And the third component is market intelligence. So material balance also allows you to identify market trends and market needs also. And for example, the evolution of valuable materials, the evolution of CRMs, critical raw materials in e-waste. A critical raw material is a material that is in high demand, but the supply of which is risky. So we're talking about gallium and indium and rare earth elements. And in Europe today, CRM is an issue of great concern, and the destination of waste and a market need. So it's not just a country tool, it's also a tool that can be applied to facilities and more regional level. And also it allows you to identify trends. So what we have done, actually, we are celebrating our 20th anniversary, and one of the first projects we undertook when we were born, let's say, in 2002, was to design a tool that allows treatment operators to create a material balance of the e-waste they treat. Secondly, to trace the flow of the waste arising from the treatment process. So what is the destination, so that you can actually identify where does it end up, where is it properly treated. Also, it allows to collect data on material composition. Fourth, calculate the recycling rate, which you can then report to the authorities. You could say that you have 100 ton as input into the plant, and you could exactly say X% is material recycling, Y% is energy recovery, and Z% is reuse, for example. So, and report the performance to the authorities and the producer responsibility organizations. So, and actually, Carlos Samba and Pranchu and his team have been really supportive in redesigning the tool. It's called REP tool, Reform Reporting Tool, in the past 2 years, and hopefully next year we will be able to, let's say, bring this tool on the market. It's going to be very useful, I think, and state-of-the-art tool that allows also people in India, because as I said, Carlos Samba helped us in designing this new tool. So that will allow operators in India, but also other places in the world, to monitor the material balance. So that's my contribution, Pranchu, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Pranchu, you're on mute.
Thank you, Pascal. So what I'll do is I'll also share my presentation, and once I've done that, then we'll take the questions from everyone. So let me just broadly give you what is our understanding and what are we trying to achieve from harmonizing the material balance report with the WEEE forum. So, and what is really material balancing reporting at a very granular level? So essentially, once the products have been collected, which is something that is happening today at scale in India because of the EPR-based regulations. So these products are being sent to dismantlers or recyclers, and after that, material extraction is happening. These materials could be under various categories, and there is some level of reporting which is done by recyclers back to the government. Today, this reporting is really not harmonized. There are certain formats which are prescribed, but the details which are required to make India go circular, those data sets are not very readily available from the present reporting tools. So the idea of doing this work or having a global harmonized material balance report is that there is a very clear pattern, for each and every recycler to put their data sets in ways and formats that it is harmonized at a global standard. Any definition that we are going to use in this tool will be something which is already discussed, debated, globally agreed. So if we try to understand, the purpose of this tool is essentially, this tool is meant to be used by the recyclers for entering the details of input and output fractions. E-waste consists of more than 60 elements which can be utilized for enabling circular economy. These materials can go back into creation of new electronics. So this also will allow a large inventory to be created. As you all know, Indian government has initiated the dialogue on circular economy in electronics as a sector. So this can play a very strong role in creating that inventory of secondary materials at a country level. So what does it mean in practice? So essentially, today we are material components, and we are mining the materials, we are producing the product, it is being put to the usage, it's going to waste, from where there are multiple collection channels by which this material is being picked up, and then it is being processed. So this work on material balance actually comes at this stage. So the first work in any material balance report is what has been collected. So detailed reporting on what has been collected is the very first input item here. The second is, once it has been dismantled, recycled, what has come out of it? And there are different types of technologies that have been defined. These are again harmonized globally. So first interim is essentially, some level of dismantling has happened, what came out of it. Second interim is, a little bit higher level of recycling, a bit of advanced recycling. And a final could be the real epoch of recycling, what has happened there. And the output fractions which are coming from these different stages, how are they, what is happening to them, where is their outlet? So these are the three things which is being managed through material balance reports. At present, there is no accounting tool for management of this data, and to bring it in a way that it is at a national level, or something which can be used for good enforcement, something which can be used for enabling circular economy, because there are data sets which would get available. So MBR has a potential to create an inventory of secondary resources, and this could be at a national level if such a harmonized tool is adopted at a country level. Also, it will allow us to understand two finer nuances. One is there will be waste fractions for which we don't have an answer, which are lying around, which just disappear. So ensure that there is no leakage of the collected waste and it is well managed. And then, as I said earlier, secondary market creation. What it also does, and one of the big benefits that we have understood from after talking to many organizations who have been using it, not in India but outside, is that it has helped in benchmarking amongst to understand the efficiencies of recycling, and how do we better our performance on recycling front. So if I, in a hypothetical scenario, if I were to just explain what would a result of an MBR look like, if we open a desktop CPU, which is the box in a desktop, then what kind of elements are coming out of it? How much is the percentage of iron? How much is mixed plastic, cables, aluminum, printed circuit boards, and so forth. And one can go into further details of these fractions then. So that level of input data can be managed using the tool. And the way it will work is you first, once you have the e-waste collected, you enter the data, you then put entries of what is happening in dismantling stages, what are the different outputs once recycling has been done. So is it going for further processing? So for example, iron, steel, tin, copper would go to a smelter where they are reprocessed before they go back to creation of a new product. There would be materials which cannot be handled, like the inks in most cases of printers. They may end up going to a TSDF. There would be other resources which can be directly utilized. So that is the reporting that we are trying to talk of. If I were to just give you an example, we have some screenshots on what we are trying to develop. So for example, in the Indian scenario, under IT W1, W2, this could be for, let's say, IT W2 category, which is desktop category. One can select what are the subcomponents in different categories. Once you go into that, this is linked to what are the Indian categories, what is the equivalent global category, what is the equivalent vForum name of that device. One can then put, for example, for a recycler, what's the invoice number in which this came, the invoice date, input the material, and then identify what is the technology by which it is being recycled. So is it the first interim technology, which means it is largely dismantling, sorting, it is shredder, it is mainly shredding, and dismantling is the first step. Then after that, what is the kind of output category that will be extracted from here? What are the fractions of these output categories? And one of the good things once you start doing this is have a very clear understanding that a ton of keyboard will yield this sort of outputs, and this has to be similar across recyclers. It can't be that a ton of keyboard is giving X constituents in Delhi and in some other city it's giving a completely different. So what it also does is brings in a very strong checks and balance to manage things. As I shared earlier, there are multiple types of technologies, interim, final. So under each and every technology, there are various levels of technology which have been defined. Each and everything has a very detailed, if I were to say, definition. Again, something which vForum has created, and we have checked it and it works for India. So that is what we have done. We have tried to ensure that it works in an Indian scenario. And the whole purpose is to really bring light to what happens post collection. How is recycling happening? What is the quality of recycling? Is even for recyclers, how do we differentiate between a great recycler and someone who is aspiring to be great? How do we ensure that fractions for which there is no recyclability today, they are brought to light? So it opens up a whole range of things. So with that, I think I'd like to take questions for this particular session. If there are any questions to Pascal from any of the participants, please type them in the box and we can take them up. If any of the speakers in the next session, if you have any of the questions for Pascal, please feel free to open your mic and ask.
So this is Arpit from Accenture. Hi, Pascal. A great presentation. A small question. So let's say if a PRO were to use something like this, do they pay a fee to you or is it offered to them? So how can a PRO, let's say, get started with using a platform like this?
We are currently still discussing the specifics of the fee system. Maybe Pranchu knows more than me, actually. It's my colleague who is monitoring and managing the specifics of the redesign of the tool. But if I remember, I mean, for example, in the past, every PRO in vForum paid a certain amount of money to the development of the tool. And now we have developed something similar. But of course, it's going to be, we are not making money with this tool. So it's a not-for-profit. We are just raising money that will cover the costs of developing the tool.
Got it. Thank you.
Arpit, I would also like to share that we are testing this with a few recyclers at this point in time, because we may need to, maybe further tweak it. There is one level of tweaking that we have already done just so that it accounts for the categories in the Indian e-waste system. So from a pure compliance perspective, but I think testing for a few more months will help us understand it better. And can it be, how do we adopt it?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so some questions from Ashish and Pooja. So the first question is, are there any formal recyclers who are willing to adopt this tool? So the answer is we have not yet taken it to a lot of recyclers. We have tried it in our own dismantling facility and it works beautifully. So again, putting it to a lot more rigorous testing because then it will have to be planned at the next level. We are reaching out to at least recyclers who are working with Karo. If they are going to show willingness to utilize this tool, at least the first level will be sorted, and then we can figure out how do we roll it along with the V4. Then the second question is, if you were to score EPR implementation in e-waste context in India out of 10, what score will you get? So I don't think I would like to rate this. I think we have started our journey. Lot to be done still. EPR has also opened up a Pandora's box, not just in India, but in many cases, in many spaces. So what has come up is strong enforcement, and some of our previous dialogue goes in this space. So while this is very specific to India, but Pascal, if you wish to add your views on how EPR has opened up spaces in different countries.
Yes, actually, I'm preparing my own conference in 2 weeks' time, the EPR Grand Challenge conference. So all the different arguments are fresh in my mind. And I just want to say, for example, that compared to 20 years ago, the challenge is to make legislation much more circular economy oriented and value chain oriented and life cycle of products oriented. This is absolutely critical. And if you look at 20 years ago in Europe, the WEEE legislation was actually oriented towards, let's say, managing waste, because it was, whatever the end of life appliances, they were considered to be a main cost, and they needed to be managed in bulk, preferably. But now the situation is not just circular economy oriented and life cycle oriented, but also, for example, we need to make sure that we can recover the critical raw materials, not only the precious metals, but also the critical raw materials such as indium and gallium and palladium and the rare earth elements. And this is very important, especially for the European Union, as we are totally dependent on countries like China or Congo or Russia, even for some of the materials. So these are the challenges that we face in the coming months and years, actually, to redesign and rethink WEEE legislation based on EPR. So actually, EPR, as we know it today, is no longer fit for purpose. We need to really redevelop the principles of extended producer responsibility.
Sure. Thank you, Pascal. There is one more question which has just come up. Is there any certification tool that comes handy to measure the impact of recycling? I think the answer is MBR in some way, because it does provide a list of secondary materials. But Pascal, if you wish to answer, so how do we measure the impact of recycling?
The impact of recycling, sounds very generic, but for example, what we have developed a few years ago is a tool that allows the PRO to identify the CO2 emissions that have been saved. So if you put this question in terms of carbon dioxide, that's a tool that allows them, because of course there are different ways in which you can manage e-waste. So if you don't treat a refrigerator properly, for example, you will have emissions of ozone depleting substances and gases with a global warming potential. And so so the tool allows you to say, if you did the irresponsible action, that would have been the emissions, but you did the best-in-class action, and therefore you avoided emissions of CO2 and ozone depleting substances. But that's a tool we developed, I think, 5 years ago. And of course, every PRO has its own tools that does that. But it depends a great deal on what exactly you mean by the impact, because there are different metrics, of course.
Sure. Thank you, Pascal. So there are many more questions coming, but I will proceed to the next session and I will pick up this. If Pascal, if you can stay, that would be great. So I'd like to welcome then for our next session, first of all, Shri Apurv Devganji. Apurv Devganji is a IAS from batch 2015. He's presently posted as the member secretary of Himachal Pradesh State Pollution Control Board and is former additional deputy commissioner of the city of Shimla. Welcome, Apurvji. I would also like...
Apurvji is just joining, so you may introduce the other speakers as well. Meanwhile, we take him in.
Sure, thank you. I'd like to then welcome Prem, Mr. Prem Anand from Dell Technologies. Prem is the product compliance and environmental affairs expert at Dell. A very long time, colleague, friend, trying to solve the problem at a very, very large scale, has been very active in the field of electronic waste management for almost 1.5 decade, even more. And thank you, Prem, for joining this very important dialogue today. I'd then also like to develop to invite Mr. Jivesh Kumar. He is presently the CEO of Greenscape, which is one of the recyclers in India. Jivesh will bring with him, why should recyclers even consider this tool, and is there a benefit of using such a tool, if at all? And then I have Mr. Arpit Srivastava, who is the engagement manager with the sustainability strategy of Accenture Consulting. Arpit, Accenture has been playing a very, very active role in designing circularity models at all levels. So it would be very interesting to hear from you, especially now that you are also doing certain reports on electronic waste management, that where do you see the role of such tools? So very warm welcome, Arpit. So if you can, yeah, thank you, Arpit. So Shripriya, kindly let me know when Renshi Apurv is available.
Pranchu, I would suggest to begin, and Apurvaji would be joining shortly.
Okay. Okay. So a very warm welcome to all three of you. Before I start, asking certain questions, I mean, if there are some very starting points that Prem, Jivesh, Arpit, you would like to make before we get the dialogue started, your initial comments, your initial thoughts on a material balance reporting tool, and the need of harmonizing this work. What is it that you see in it? So Prem, I'll love to start with you, please.
Yeah, sure, Pranchu. I think I would kind of be very surprised to see and hear if someone says, I dismantle a keyboard or a laptop here in Bangalore, and then I get XYZ amounts of ABC material, and then the same material, or rather the same model gets dismantled, let's say in Singapore or in US or in UK, and then they say, it's going to be different. I would actually be very surprised, because today the tech industry, the technology industry is truly, truly global, right? Take a factory, doesn't manufacture to a market. And for that matter, no models are manufactured to market. They're global models, global factories, global products shipping to across the world. What could probably change in a product is depending on the voltage in which it is operating, or depending on the type of the plug that is mandated, that could change, but the rest of the product is not going to change. So when someone comes and tells me it's different, kind of surprises me, right? So that's the first thing that I would like to go on record. From the next point is on when you talk about material balance, I think this the scale and scope at which we are trying to do here through this, or through this tool, seems to be much different and much bigger than what normal mass balance that we do from our own audits, right? So we do have periodic audits, annual audits of our recycling service providers, right? So we do this, but we do select a particular window of time, let's say a quarter in a particular year, or a particular window of time, and then look at the mass balance, like as in how much of volume went from us to that particular recycler, what happened to this materials, and so on. So definitely this is good. This is a huge step that has to be taken. I think we still need to see how much of an adoption that we're going to see by the recyclers here, right? And then I also get a little jittery when you put or not put, when you collate or collect data, which I don't know, for some reason has always been little hazy, right? You talk about this, mass balance or material balance to recycler A, you hear something. To talk to recycler B, you hear something, and then it's totally different. Now, how much of an openness is there going to be from the recyclers end? That's the other point. And now, my final remarks on this one is like, what's going to be the incentive or motivation for a recycler to pick up a tool and again spend more time in kind of churning out the data, which otherwise he's not going to be interested in doing, right? What's the incentive? I think if we are able to chat around all this, I think that's probably going to help everyone here.
Thank you, Prem. Let me just take a pause and welcome Shri Apurv Devganji, who has just joined us. So welcome. Mr. Apurv Devgan, Shri Apurv Devgan is presently the member secretary of Himachal Pradesh Pollution Control Board. And he was also the former additional deputy commissioner of Shimla. Welcome, sir, to this dialogue. Let me take... Let me ask you a very open question as we have just started this dialogue. Just give me a minute. I'll come back to you. So, what are the changes? I mean, it is very important that we have a state pollution control board, present in this dialogue because actually if we are to really improve the efficiency and quality of recycling at a country, I think state pollution control boards will have a massive role in that. And there are multiple tools that are required for this to happen. So the tool that we are discussing here, sir, is a material balance reporting tool, which essentially tells that if a recycler is getting X amount of material, what is really coming out of it. And a ton of keyboard, like Prem just mentioned, will give similar things in India as well as in any country outside India. So that constituents out of this will not change. Today we don't have reporting formats for similar things in India. So my first question to you, sir, is as the leader of Himachal Pradesh SPCB, what are the biggest challenges that you are today seeing from an e-waste perspective and especially its recycling?
Pranshuji, thank you for having me here. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
It was wonderful listening to the introductory session, which was taken by you and Leroy. I was actually present. I was not given presentation rights, so I wasn't able to speak up when you asked me to. The question that you asked me, well, it's such a huge question, and the wide range of participants that we have today, it relates with everyone. And the challenges are just not, of a particular organization. It's for the various stakeholders as a whole, be it the PROs, be it the concerned citizens, the producers, the manufacturers. It's for all of us to ensure that, we work in the field of electronics equipment in an environmentally sustainable manner in the future for the preservation of the environment. I would really like to speak from the point of view of the Pollution Control Board, and I'm sure that is why you have me here. The first, and I would also like to mention before I begin that Himachal Pradesh is unique in many ways as compared to other states of the country with regards to the population, the pollution levels, and if we speak in the current context of electronic equipment being used, the density of such equipment being used, and furthermore, the waste being generated from such electronic equipment. So in that light, the first challenge becomes correct inventorization. We are talking about MBR, and of course, it's about the volumes and the mass and the weight of all of this equipment, of all of the electronic equipment that we are using currently, and also the waste that is coming out of it. So inventorization is a very important aspect of this, which of course is complementary to MBR. So if I speak about the Himachal Pradesh State Pollution Control Board or other pollution control boards, it is a duty of the pollution control boards to ensure correct inventorization of say what is the volume coming in, what is the waste generated being reported and processed or disposed, so to say. And we have found that to be very challenging. The methodology to be adopted is as we have tried to carry out the inventorization in the past few years, we have done that. But even to us, that inventorization was not accurate, and I'm sure that is a challenge that was faced by other pollution control boards as well. So we really need to have say panel of people, organizations, institutes of repute, PROs or NGOs who have some expertise in this field, who can help us calculate that, and so that, because if that is the foundation of the entire task. That
Sure.
is one. Then second, when we talk about volumes, we should also talk about the difference in estimates that all of us are coming up with, be it private organizations, be it government bodies, environment departments, pollution control boards at the center or the state. We really have different estimates, which of course come from the inventorization, for example. And also the difference in estimates is also the volume coming in and the volume going out. The volume coming in, so to say, it is estimated that it is 5.8 kgs per capita of electronic equipment being produced in the country. May not be the latest figure, but the generated waste that we have all documented or we estimate as of now, I think that's a CPCB figure. That's that's less than half. So where is all of that going? That is my concern. That is our concern. That is a shared concern. So
Sure.
that is one of the challenges which I think, if we are thinking on the lines, and if we are thinking on the lines of adopting a concept like MBR, which should certainly help us. I would also like to add, submit that MBR as a concept, though while that the terminology is different, it is not something that we are new to. If you talk about industry generates water effluent. So there is water coming in, there is water coming out, there is water being absorbed in the processes. So there is something what we call the water audit, right?
Yeah.
For any industry, to ensure that no unscientific discharge of effluent is taking place. What the industry claims to be the effluent discharge and the treatment and the volumes therein, that is actually happening. So MBR is related to that, and we really need to adopt it scientifically, so that by theory also and practical also, the difference in estimates and data does not occur. That is one of the challenges we are facing at this time. Then another challenge, for example, for the state boards currently is, if you talk about producers, the various companies which are producing all of these goods, as per the definition in the e-waste rules, their EPR authorization is supposed to go given by at the national level, at whatever state they are working in. It is given by the Central Pollution Control Board. Now that is some data we are not privy to. So it is my concern, and it is the State Pollution Control Boards which really have to look into where that volume is coming in from. And it is not possible for me to, for a state board to work with LG, Dell, Apple, every one of them. That data, if a central body is doing that we need that data to be able to, see what is coming in and what is going out, and whether that the waste generation actually depends on that. A lot of waste in our state, though I must admit the informal sector has set itself up pretty well when it comes to recycling, refurbishing, dismantling of the electronic waste, be it in various parts of the country, be it in metropolitans or even in a state like Himachal Pradesh, where in the informal sector, the electronic waste is being taken outside the state into the informal sector in, say, Chandigarh, and thereon to Delhi. We know who these people are. And I must admit, they're an integral part of this entire ecosystem at this stage. And they are doing a really good job, which is beneficial. But because a lot of them are not authorized, a lot of them are not a part of the formal ecosystem, we are not able to track the numbers. It is very important that they are part of the regulatory mechanism or the formal mechanism, so we are able to trace the numbers. Till the time they are not brought into the ecosystem, we are not able to trace the numbers, and everything we speak about will be theoretical in entirety. So that is why when pollution control boards or the CPCB, when we say that more and more informal sector needs to be integrated into the formal sector, it is not really for regulation. Regulation will be the second part of it, that whether they are using scientific principles for the dismantling, for the refurbishing, for the recycling, and for the disposal of electronic waste. It is also so that we can at least have correct figures. We can have, with those correct figures, we can develop we can frame proper policy, we can have proper establishments for refurbishing and recycling setup, we can identify the need, where is the need for setting up more centers, and probably through startups and other such organizations, and say by the role of organizations, PROs like Karo Sambhav play, they can actually identify where the gap is and they can move in that direction. Everyone, all of the stakeholders in the ecosystem. So that is the challenge we are facing. And because of the gaps, we also observe when we are talking about MBR, though we are not using that term formally, but there's some sort of material audit that is taking place, we see gaps. We see gaps of the volumes of the kind of e-waste we are expected to generate and the e-waste that is actually reaching the recycler. So where is that going? If it goes into the informal sector, some of them which is not, some of the waste which is not useful, some components which are not useful is actually being dumped somewhere. And that is, so for that, the formalization of these activities, the tracking of the materials becomes essential. That is a challenge that we face at this time. In Himachal, we have, I would say, 3 dismantling and recycling facilities, which may or may not be appropriate for the state of size of Himachal. And we have the issue or the solution is strengthened by the presence of Karo Sambhav in the state, which plays an essential role in dealing with e-waste here. But it is seen that these facilities are underutilized. Now, whoever the investor is, they have set up some facilities and adequate e-waste is also being produced, but it has to reach those facilities so that optimum utilization of those facilities takes place, amongst other objectives that will be fulfilled in this manner. We also need our ULBs to step up. So far, since the advent of the e-waste rules, the ULBs had not been given responsibilities to set up collection centers for electronic waste. And that is what the response had been, that it is not a responsibility prescribed to us under the e-waste rules. I think we all will be glad that while we had been pursuing this issue with not only the Urban Development Department, with the central government as well, the MOEF has on the 2nd of September amended the e-waste rules and said that it will be the responsibility of ULBs to set up collection centers for electronic waste in their vicinity by April 23. And I think that's a huge step. That is a huge support to this ecosystem that should exist. For the average life of the products, when we are talking about estimating the quantity of electronic waste being generated, it is also important to, as has already been mentioned by Premji, when he was giving the example of a keyboard and the components or the materials it is generating when it is dismantled. Similarly, we also need to standardize the average life of products. Once that is standardized, it will be helpful for us to estimate what is the waste being generated in different parts of the country. Further, if you look at the e-waste rules, there is also, while whenever some new concepts are taking birth, while this problem is an old issue, but whenever some organization is working in a new direction, and I would admit that the problem of e-waste and its management is in a nascent stage, and a lot needs to be done. So the easier fruit which can be plugged is targeted first, right? So if you look at the e-waste rules carefully, you can notice that the recycling targets are not applicable to waste which is generated from solar panels, the photovoltaic cells, etc. So that is with the National Solar Mission and whatnot happening. These products have entered. These are leading to creation of e-waste in the country, and that needs to be looked into as well. And I'm sure we'll be progressing in that direction as well. So yeah, that's from the top of my mind. And Pranshu, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. No, thank you so much, Apurji, for sharing your views. Let me now bring in Jivesh. Jivesh, your first views on the role of MBR. How do you view it as a recycler? I mean, you started your operations quite a while back. So, however, this particular aspect has not been standardized. There is very little dialogue on this tool. Each and every recycler is using their own system. So what do you think, adds value? Is this a value addition for you?
Hi, thanks, Pranchu, for having me here. It's great to hear all the thoughts, and this is one of the first times that I'm seeing a tool of this sort. So, like Prem was also asking, I think it's a added workload for a recycler to build in all the data. But what I see is that all the recyclers got into this business to ensure that the load can be taken off erstwhile mining to put these resources back into play. So if you enter the data into the system and you can get some good data back to kind of tangibly measure yourself on global standards, that would be a good advantage for a recycler. Competitive advantages, like they say, if you can't make it tangible, you can't improve it, right? And a lot of this waste is changing quite a bit. And like you said, in the decade, I've seen the composition of electronics being very different from where I started, from where we are. And it's a constant innovation. So it keeps you online, on target to how the world is changing as well. But of course, it's easier said than done. There is a long way to go till the time we can get an effective solution that can, ensure that the benchmarks are correctly set. So right now, I think you've been in the industry for so long, recycler term and per se facilities are very are not defined very well in this country, if I can put it that way. This tool can also ensure that quality recycling is given the kind of spotlight that it deserves, because see, a lot of entrepreneurs work in a lot of different manner with a lot of thinking. Some are highly focused on rare earths, metals. Some are focused on plastics, but of course, as a facility, you should know and you should be aware that where are the sinks in these things. You can't be a master of all. As a recycler, there's about 52 metals and non-metals. So where I see this tool, and Prem, just to answer this question, as a recycler, I feel it can kind of tie up a lot of loose ends that currently exist in the Indian scenario of recyclers, which I hope is meant to do the same, because I was pleasantly surprised detailed work that V Forum, Pranchu have done on this sort of a thing. And of course, I think positive spin for recyclers to be a part of it, and trust me, we all do our internal workings in one way or the other as recyclers to ensure our productivity, our competitiveness, our value add. And this tool can answer the questions. Is there a better way? How do you benchmark yourself? Are you competitive enough? Like, just to give you a brief, we benchmark ourselves with the bill of materials that the manufacturers set, right? And I can give you a thing. Nobody in India can come close to more than 10% of the value of the bill of material that you can extract out of these things, which is very low as standards. We feel that, given the advantages in the Indian scenario, we can do so. It's not just the quantity material balancing, but also the quality of goods that you can produce out of recycling. That also material balancing can really help. So, quantitative analysis, qualitative analysis, if a system can feed data tangibly back into a recycler's domain, I feel it can really, really add value to a recycler, and it can actually be worth the extra effort from a recycler's side to ensure that, what they give, they get enough back to it. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Thank you, Jivesh. Just to add to what you are saying, what I also find is, as we are moving to this new EPR-based portal where recycling credits would be issued by a portal, I mean, this tool, or some sort of data will need to be fed. What's the basis of that data? So on what basis is government going to say, okay, this recycling of 1 ton of keyboards has happened, or 1 ton of. So this becomes a very important factor to justify those data declarations, and in some way it also allows then clear auditability that, okay, if these fractions were generated, where are they? We have in the previous seminars also discussed the big challenges in terms of a lot of collection happening on paper. So it also then has that potential of changing that scenario. So with this, Arpit, we have been debating about this a lot in our previous interactions. You are doing a good body of work, putting it all together. So would you like to share your views on how do you think?
Sure, Pranshu. So I would like to maybe cover two things. One, I think first we need to establish whether MBR is needed, because there is a group of, let's say, stakeholder which still questions the need for MBR. And I think each of the panelists that spoke before me alluded to the reasons why, something like MBR is a must-have. So one is, of course, bringing a stop to the paper transaction that happens. We also found that, that 20 to 30% of the EPR targets are just met through the inventory rotation. It's the same inventory that keeps rotating. Now, how do we really catch that? There is no way, we do that unless we start asking for a very granular reporting. Second reason that was given by Jivesh, that if we were to really improve the value of the material as well as the volume, again, something like MBR may be helpful. And then I think there was a point that Apurji made as well, that inventorization. I think if we implement MBR at scale, even that could cascade into an inventorization exercise as well, because eventually all the materials that get collected right at the entry point will get reported. So that can help to some extent even with the inventorization task as well. So I think there is no single reason why it should not be adopted at scale, but the question that keeps coming is the cost. And how do we really cover the cost for something like this? So I think 2-3 things. One, brands have to push their PROs, their recyclers, to adopt something like this, more like a responsible sourcing practice, right? If a FMCG company is buying palm oil, they buy palm oil which is registered by Rainforest Alliance. There are many such standards. So why can't a PRO also meet those minimum requirements? And one of those minimum requirements could be that, okay, they subscribe to a platform like this and report to a platform like this. And whatever the additional cost is should come from the EPR cost. It could be, what we call the fair cost of EPR, of maintaining that data registry, maintaining the FTs, which will be required to input this data, so on and so forth. And if you look at the total EPR kitty, I'm sure it won't be more than 2-3% of the total EPR expenditure that they have, the cost of implementation of a tool like this. So this is, I think, the brand perspective. And then I think there is a vested interest that government has as well, because increasingly we are moving towards a narrative of creating a very robust secondary material market and creating that, national security of critical raw materials. So unless we are really able to track how much critical raw material is being leaked, how much of, let's say, all the metal, non-metal, specialist plastics are being leaked, we really won't be able to have that visibility into these strategic raw materials, critical raw materials, and this national priority of, ensuring resource self-sufficiency. So I think there's a vested interest that government has as well. And if you talk about critical raw materials, precious metals, e-waste is one of the key source. India is not a producer of any of these critical raw materials. We are dependent on China. I think Pascal was mentioning about EU's approach to managing the critical raw materials. So I think the problem is same for India as well, that we are dependent on other countries, and only once we start tracking at such granular level will we be able to really get a hang of how much we are importing, how much we are extracting locally, and how much we are really managing through the e-waste recycling infrastructure. So that is my view, and I think Pranshu have done a great job with Pascal in creating a platform like this. I had the opportunity to even see a quick demo as well when I was in your office. So I think it's fantastic, and you made a point around harmonization. So in fact, today In Delhi, we were having a conference on circular economy organized by FICCI, and we are working on a measurement framework to track the progress on circular economy front for corporates. And a key finding that came out was harmonization. That India
Yeah.
should not really create a silo of its own where we are, having our own standards just for the sake of it. If there is something good that exists, let's adopt that, and let's because on the first principles basis, things don't change. Indian consumer is same as European consumer. The products are same. The technologies are largely same. Maybe there are few informal technologies that are used in India, or some additional components which might be and I think that is what, Pranshu, you are validating at the moment. But on first principles basis, I think nothing changes, and that is why harmonization becomes important. But even then, if the local stakeholders feel that there is a need for some enhancement, we can do that. So while the core remains harmonized, there could be some India specific enhancements like aligning it with ITW, which I think also is something that Karo Sambhav is doing. But overall, I think the idea of harmonization is good. It will keep us up to date with the best practices globally. And we really don't have to reinvent the wheel there then.
Sure.
So that's what I had in mind, Pranshu.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Arpit. Let me go back to Prem. Prem, Dell has very strong circularity goals and is making, very positive progress towards attaining these goals at a global level. At a WEF level, I think Dell is one of those very strong companies which is pushing this agenda from very early stages. So how do you think, something of this sort? And the whole idea is, there is so much spend which is today happening from each and every company's perspective towards EPR. Do you think such tools, such processes, systems will help enhance that ability to use, what is started via EPR from setup of collection channels to recycling to bring it to a logical conclusion of circularity?
Hey, I think yes, broadly yes, but then the means may be slightly different, right? Why I say that is, if you look at the portfolio of circular economy programs or products or whatever we've created, right? Say for example, take the most recent, the rare earth magnets project, right? As a brand, we need to have a business case, a very strong business case to pick up a project. And when we do something, or when we start something, if we are not able to complete it successfully, then it sets a very different tone and sends a very different message across the entire world, right? So we cannot afford to have any failures at all in our circular economy journey, which indirectly means that there's so much of research and data and crunching numbers goes into it, right? So now I'm sure you'll be able to connect back here. When for us to pick up a project, we need to see where the business case is, and for that we've identified certain areas to work and then go crunch the numbers and then work backwards. Say for example, you see a business case to do a rare earth magnets recycling, then you go figure it out and then work backwards. Now, if I connect it back to tool, now the tool can help bring data from what it is at the recycler level and then carry it forward. While we come backwards, I think there will be a sweet spot, which probably you only have to travel half the distance. Both parties have traveled half the distance to meet. I think that's how I see it.
Yeah, because if I think of it, Prem, today, we don't even know how much of this material, if let's say if we talk of magnets, just from a rare earth perspective, we don't even know what's the quantum which is available out there. So today those numbers are completely absent. Or let's say, we have been trying to figure out some solutions for different types of e-waste plastic. The quantums are not really known today. If one has to scale up and let's say some products have to be created out of it, what is the total quantum that is sitting out there? And from a brand's perspective, I keep on hearing this again and again that we need, long-term forecasts. And without those data sets being generated at the recycling level, that forecast will never be available. So a very big benefit that I see even from a recycling point of view is the ability to then collaborate with brands in the future for ensuring that this is a raw material which goes for creating new products. Otherwise, there is also a struggle on how do you manage the materials post recycling. So, and any other perspective from your side, Prem, especially on the harmonization front, considering you are a global company.
Yeah, true. See, harmonization point of view, I think yes, there's a need to harmonize it. And I mean, I think let me quote this. Like few years back, when we wanted to do something in India, I think our hands were tied due to the lack of data. Right? When someone from the global supply chain team asked me what's the volume of recycled plastics you would be able to get, as in closed loop plastics you would be able to get from India, I had no number. I had no basis to even put a number. Right? I think that work has to commence.
Sure. I'll just now ask just open questions, and anyone who feels like asking, like entering or answering the question, please do. So, can this help? Can such tools help in? We have this whole range of recycling in India. Right from and we have a very large database of recyclers. Over 500 plus recyclers. I think it is almost. I don't know the latest numbers, but I believe it would have touched 500. Now, and these are all varieties of recyclers. Some of them very, very early stage, very, very early stage processes, very early stage system, but everyone claims to be doing exactly the same thing. So there is no differentiation which is happening at a recycler level. So, what is the best quality recycler? What kind of efficiency they are achieving? Do they really have what it takes to be a recycler? Or is every, can they, because the term recycler today engulfs everything. It is like give him anything and he will recycle. Whereas probably the capacity is to only do one variety of or one type of material. So does any of the participants here think that such things, as we go ahead, and this is really a progressive step towards. So I'm really thinking, what is EPR 2.0? What is the next level of maturity for our system? And that's where this sort of a model fits in. So at a state level, this has been a challenge. How do we know what recyclers are okay, what are the best ones, who need to be penalized, who need to be incentivized? So any views on this side? Because this is coming up again and again in various spaces. Any one of you can take.
Well, if I may, Pranshu, when you're speaking about penalization, etc., I think that's one of the jobs of the regulators or the government to do the same. And when I speak about the Pollution Control Board, we examine, regulate, inspect these operators from the point of view of whether they are disposing and managing the activity scientifically or not. And of course, with newer technologies coming in, more efficient ways of doing the same coming in, that is changing by the day. That is involving ecosystem. But herein as well, the data reported by these entities need to be verified, need to be checked. And I think that is the theme of your today's episode, right? We are talking about the reporting mechanism for what is happening to the various materials that are coming out of the dismantling exercise for whatever way they are being disposed for. So that data and that data's accuracy, we are as a body, we are always doubtful, be it the industry, be it a deep burial unit, be it a hazardous waste unit or a biomedical waste facility. We'll always adopt checks and balances for that. But that is where say a product which is working on the lines of MBR, but and it should be end to end, the producer, from the producer to the manufacturer, cradle to grave, as we say. And that is where it will be very helpful to us as well if it is adopted. And I must also add that the Central Pollution Control Board is currently developing one portal as well, and which has been, as far as I know, has been prepared, where EPR will be taken on board. However, we may or may not be satisfied with the current methodology of imposing EPR and the further what happens after that with that. but that portal is being developed the way it has been developed for the plastic waste in the country as well. And we hope, I as a pollution control board officer, I hope that it will also include something like this, which talks about what waste is being generated and what from the producer's end till its final disposal.
Sure. Thank you. Jivesh, any suggestions from your side? Anything that you would like to top up?
So I guess you guys have touched on all the topics around here in terms of the the data gathering and the data processing. See, as recyclers, everybody needs to understand the challenges of recyclers. It's not that every recycler wants to or has the capability, like you said, of these now what 72 categories of waste. There is a lot of learning that is coming in, and I think I would still say that we are at a very nascent stage in India, that the recycling is getting started, but it's come a long way. Okay, I've seen it developing. There's better ways, and I sincerely think that we as the recycling industry in India have a huge competitive advantage in terms of arbitrages that we have. In recycling, the thumb rule is garbage in, garbage out. We can do a lot of manual processing, to ensure that the quality of materials that we produce can be one of the best levels in terms of like polymers, which are hard to separate once they are mixed together, and it can actually be put back into in a much better fashion. Just the things that would have eventually gone down for consumption as fuel or creating some calorific value can actually be reprocessed and put back into supply chains, because there's a huge tailwinds of these recycled materials being in demand, and every organization talking about ESG on board levels. It's a huge opportunity for all the recyclers to come up as well, and take advantage of what we have in this country, and make it a global standard.
Sure. So I also request all the participants to please write any questions. There are a lot which I'll pick up now to ask the participants, to ask the panelists. So one of the questions which has come up is on can we utilize similar tools for other waste varieties? Can it be used at MRF level for plastic waste? So if any one of you wants to take it up, Arpit, if you are working on multiple sectors, if you would like to take it up, it would be nice.
Sure, Pranshu. So I believe that let's say the V Forums tool that we just saw may not be directly applicable as it is on other waste streams, because of course the technologies for e-waste recycling are different from those that would be used for plastic or other battery, let's say other waste streams. But having said that, the overall architecture can remain same. Yeah. And I think tools can be built similar to what we just saw for e-waste for other sectors as well. It's just that in electronics it becomes more important because there are so many components, so many technologies. Plastics is slightly easier, let me put it that way. So it really doesn't require that much of granularity that e-waste management does. And then I don't think if there are tools, but still there are standards which are dedicated for plastics and other categories as well, which could be adopted as well. Where there are reporting templates which are granular enough for those specific waste streams. Yeah.
So to Arpit, to just top up what you just said, I think this is about complexity of the product in itself. The more complex the product is, the higher and the depth of the tool will increase many folds. And e-waste is probably one of the most complex tools that we have also tried to work on. Let me also bring up here that Karusambhav is also now working with V Forum on design of very similar tool for batteries of all chemistries. So we have just started this work. In a few months' time, we should be in a space that it will be harmonized with all global standards. And so that there are because the main thing that we are trying to do is that there should be no difference in the definitions of material used in India. So if we are calling something as tin, that tin is universally, it's the same definition of tin if we are calling recycling technology as extraction, then the extraction as a terminology is commonly accepted globally. So that, because it is really about brands. At the end of the day, a Dell has to work in India, it has to work in 10 other parts. If these kind of terminologies are not harmonized, circularity will almost be impossible. So the end goal is, can we have these very clear harmonized dialogues, because circularity is very, very high on agenda, whether we talk of Apple, whether if we talk of Dell, HP, HPE, every company is trying to drive this at their through a lot of work. And this will become a very, very fundamental to that. Let me also add, we are also trying to do this in plastics early stage, but plastics is actually very easy. So it will be, I think, almost 80% of this tool on the plastics is ready. I'm happy to share others with you at a later stage, but this is very doable. The simpler the product, the better the outcome would be here. Another question which is coming up is, this is on the informal sector. And can informal sector, can this open pathways for formalization in any way? This is a fairly open question. I lead it to a lot of interpretation, but does it allow in some way formalization of informal sector? It's a fairly long drawn question, but if you can connect those dots.
Could probably narrow it down for some of us, Pranshu.
Sure. So I think the way I'm trying to think of this question is, maybe informal sector can be not incentivized necessarily, but if the tool opens up very simple technologies, because what it also does is it creates that three set of technologies. First is the first interim, which is the baseline technologies that can be deployed to open the first, let's say, do the first level of dismantling. Then it's the second interim, which is the second set of technologies. So what it also does is it bucketizes technologies in different ways, and which allows, if someone has to open a very simple dismantling unit, okay, these are the kind of things that one needs to do, and this is the output. So in some way, it simplifies it. Today, the definition of recycler is very complex. Even for me, if someone asks me what's a recycler in India, I will most likely not be able to answer this, even after putting I don't know, Prem, how do you think about it? But for me, it's very difficult to recycle, because for me, every recycler is a dismantler of a different variety. There is no categorization. We are still trying to figure out the most complex fractions, like rare earths, like precious metals at the deepest level. So there is early stage work happening, but not the deepest. So that bucketizing, I believe, will help the informal sector. I'd like to hear, any views on this.
Of course, when we are talking about the definitions of recycling, dismantling, etc., having a top-down approach does help us. When the definitions, Pranshu, you are speaking about in your daily line of work, they are what are given by the MOEF in the e-waste rules, and probably a division based on the work each one of them are doing based on technology would certainly help all of us in defining who a dismantler is, or what functions they are performing, or who a recycler is, and will also help us to regulate those, and in order to bring all of them, make all of them a part of the ecosystem. And because they certainly, as you mentioned, there's a lot of overlapping as well. As you said, who you see as a dismantler or who you see as a recycler is a little bit of the other as well. And that does create issues from a regulator's point of view as well. And harmonization of these definitions and more clarity about the same will definitely go a long way for all of us to function well.
Thank you, Apurji. Another question has come up, which is again a very interesting question. What is the current reality of secondary raw materials in India? Jivesh, you have been trying to do this. I've heard from you many a times that you have been trying to solve this point that, what is happening with raw materials? What's the current reality? Where do they end up?
So yeah, I think in India, the secondary raw material powers a lot of different supply chains. We have a lot of industries. The quality of the product, like you're saying, depends on the way that it's been recycled. So there are products that can actually have the capability to move back into the same product manufacturing, which primarily is a little far away in India because the quality of manufacturing that it desires, the scale it desires, because all these companies, if they have to change their manufacturing technique to using recycled secondary materials such as recycled polymers, you need to have the quality as well as the quantity to supply them month on month, which is getting there. So I can see, like, right now the current reality of the secondary raw materials is that it's powering a lot of small enterprises. Probably, it's not up to the quality. So just to give you an example, the plastics that are used in these electronic goods, they have a life of at least 8 times being recycled. But because of the inefficiencies of production as of now that exist, they are going into supply chains which are going, and there is no data that I can quote you from, but it's a market reality because I've been in the market for the last decade or so, and it's my read into it. There is a lot of scope for improvement, if I can put it that way, in terms of secondary raw material processing. Does that answer the question? Is that something,
Sure.
Pranshu, that you
Sure, Jivesh. So,
trying to ask?
yeah, sure. Because again, the thing is, a lot of it goes to some places. Not all those places are known. So today we don't have that visibility. Some people have who are tracing it down, but not everyone. So I think this also something. Maybe a lot of good work is already happening. We just don't know. So it will also put light to that good work if it is happening already. So with this, I think we are coming to almost the end of our session. I don't see many more questions here. Majority of the questions have been covered. But I would love to give a few minutes to each of the speakers, panelists here. If you'd like to share your viewpoints, your final takes from this. I believe my personal view is this is a very, very important aspect of what our evolved EPR should look like. Our next level of growth, and especially tying EPR to circular systems. But over to you. So, Prem, would you like to share your last views?
Yeah, Pranshu. Yeah. So I think we've been talking about from EPR to circular economy. So the one thing that I've been always crunching or talking about or advocating for is, like, I think we need to move away from looking at EPR as a compliance requirement, right? So what happens there is, like, the more you tighten the belt and then you attach more risk clauses and exposures to it, any producer, any for that matter, anyone operating in the sector tends to be more, how do I put it? Tends to be more conservative and doesn't want to take the risk in doing certain things, right? So the more we open up to make it more resource efficiency oriented, and then more market oriented, that is when a lot of innovation will start happening. I think we probably need to have a session around that one as well, right? How do you make it more market oriented and then drive innovation or trigger innovation in this space?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Prem. This is a super important aspect. And how do we, change this mindset that EPR is just compliance to EPR is a great opportunity for really enabling circular economy at a company level. Thank you for sharing that. Apoorvji, would you like to share anything? Your closing remarks? Apoorvji, are you there? Okay. If not, Jivesh, I would like to come to you.
Yeah. So I think we are at a cusp of change right now, and we as a circular economy will be defined by the decisions that we take. So the right kind of tools to make the right kind of decisions for the challenges that we are presented will always be welcome from all stakeholders, whether it's the manufacturers, the producers, the recyclers. If the intent is right and the right kind of tools are there, right kind of data sharing is there, the right kind of decisions would be made, which would actually, I feel, push us together to make a very efficient system of the circular economy. So I think like we are going in the right direction, and hopefully all these things put together, one of these years we can look back and say we did some good work.
Sure. Thank you, Jivesh. Arpit?
Yeah, so Pranshu, I think we are standing at a cusp also in the sense that there is a lot of push on domestic electronics manufacturing. And fab level manufacturing, very upstream, manufacturing is going to come to India, if not in the next 2-3 years, but looks like in this decade is going to bring some changes. And when that happens, the OEMs will require secondary raw materials. Now they can either depend on a Chinese supplier or a supplier in some other country, or they can develop local suppliers in India. Now, where will those local high quality secondary raw material suppliers are going to come from? I think these are going to be the recyclers, that we see around us. And when well-known, let's say OEM would like to source some secondary raw material, they would want to have the responsible sourcing clauses attached to it, that it should be traceable, it should be slave-free, blah blah blah. And that can also be made possible through platforms like MBR. That throughout the supply chain we had the visibility and fair practices were followed. Therefore, the palladium or the whichever rare earth or precious metal I'm supplying to you meets these basic requirements. So I think that is another lens from which this could be approached to create, the business case for something like this. Because if we start doing this now, maybe in the 5-6 years we'll see enough adoption, and by that time I think local manufacturing would start becoming vibrant, and some big large scale secondary material suppliers may emerge out of this transition.
Thank you, Arpit. Apurji, if you are able to unmute yourself and you are still here, then any closing remarks from your side? I think there is some technical challenges that he is facing. So he's there. Yeah, Apurji, would you like to share some closing remarks? Your mic is on mute.
I would just like to say that from the point of view of the government and the regulators, and of course we have, because see, all of you play such an important role in the entire ecosystem, we all need to really work together. This is an emerging area of concern. I would say emerging area because we all agree that this is this task is at a nascent stage, and the challenges are right in front of us, and we really need to work hard because it's a grave concern. So far, we have been working on all other sorts of solid waste, the industry discharges and other pollutants, air pollutants, etc. But the kind of waste we are talking about has an impact on all of this. So, and hence, tackling it properly becomes an important foundation of environment preservation. And I'm just glad that there's so many concerned people out there. I have been trying very hard with the the Karo Sambhav team also raises concerns here quite often. We have been working hard, but again, we are so short pressed of the manpower we need to dedicate to this task. And I think the first, though I should say that the first accomplishment is this only, that we understand that this is a task that requires our attention. That sure. is, and I think that is from where we can move on and do better things.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind remarks. And I think we all recognize, I think what I hear today is a very, I would say almost every quarter, we have been, from a regulation point, from a producer's point of view, recycling point of view, PRO, my point of view, or even enabling organizations like Accenture, or organizations which are associations like V4M. I think everyone seems to be fairly positive about building up such solutions, such systems. Yes, there will be costs, some cost to this system. Just to share a bit from our experience, it seems there will be some cost, but this is not a prohibitive cost. We are talking of very minor costs increment, especially if we are to look at it break it down at a per kg level of EPR phase. So we are talking of fairly minor cost. There is definitely a cost to adoption of some of these systems. But with that, really, thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to Bhaskar, for participating in this system. As I shared, this is the whole series on demystifying EPR, on figuring out how do we enable circular economy at scale. We are thankful to our sponsors due to which this whole series has been made possible: Apple, Dell Technologies, and HP Enterprise. We are also thankful to GIZ, WEEE Forum, and Switch Asia, who are knowledge partners to these series. With that, I'd like to thank you all for participation. And we'll be back next month for the 6th episode. This is the 8-episode series, which we will complete by the end of this year. We will pick up another relevant topic, another relevant tool, and we will organize a debate on it. Thank you for today. Have a fantastic day ahead.